Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm very excited about today's lineup because we are diving into 3 festive Christmas projects. First up, we're starting with a thrifted metal mailbox that I'm transforming into a magical Santa mailbox, the perfect spot to collect all those special letters to Santa. Next, we're jumping into one of our brand new CnC DIY Factory kits, the set of 3 whimsical laser cut trees. I'm turning these into a snowy, wintry little forest that looks like it came straight out of the North Pole. And lastly, we're finishing with one of our classics, our 9x7 Farmhouse-Style Makers Frame, to frame the sweetest little postcard to Santa. I'm Cindy, my husband is Chris. Welcome to CnC DIY Factory. If you like this content, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment on your favorite project. I found this metal mailbox at a thrift store, and I knew I wanted this to be a special mailbox to collect all of Santa's mail. I start by taking off the oval mail plaque and painting the entire box with Fusion Mineral paint in Fort York Red, and I will apply 2 coats for full coverage. The IOD Holiday 2025 release had this beautiful Saint Nick mold, and this is my first time getting to work with it. I normally use resin when working with molds, but I have some IOD air dry clay that needs to be used up, so I start by dusting my mold with some cornstarch to help the clay release from the mold. My clay is well over a year old and it's a little tough, but I moistened it with some distilled water to help soften it up. Normally the clay is very soft and easy to work into the molds, but since this has been in my crafting supplies for so long, it's kind of like kneading dough that has too much flour. But I am still able to get it smoothed out to the edges, and you can see that it still rolls out of the mold and holds all of those beautiful details. While the clay is still wet, I am going to paint the entire piece with parchment by Fusion Mineral paint. The paint will help the clay dry slower and reduce the risk of cracking in the clay. Now, pro tip, demold your clay onto a thick Mylar magazine divider so it can be painted, and then you can move it to the side to dry as needed without disturbing the details of the mold. Now I'm applying this to a flat surface, so I let my clay dry overnight. Now I can flip it over while it's still on that Mylar divider and add my Titebond Quick and Thick glue to the back of it. I'll smooth the glue all the way to the edges to ensure a good bond to the surface. I'm always nervous to do this. I flip my mold onto my mailbox, trying to get it as close to the spot I want it, and then I'll gently press around the edges and throughout the center to make sure the clay and the glue have full contact. Then I'll clean up the glue around the edges with a damp cloth or a wet paintbrush, and I'll let this dry for about 10 minutes before moving on. Once everything is dry, I will add some IOD transfers from the Santa's Hollow set. If you haven't used a transfer, you simply line up the transfer where you want it, you peel off the white backer sheet, and lay the transfer down. Then, using the rubbing tool that comes in every transfer set, simply rub over the top of the carrier sheet to release the image to your project. Once you have the image down, you take that carrier sheet, flip it over, and burnish in the transfer. This will need a coat of sealer to protect the transfers. To keep this video from being too long, I did not show the painting of Santa's hat, but I used the same Fort York Red from Fusion to paint his hat, and now I'm mixing up some chestnut mare and parchment to create the skin color for his face. I will also use a bit of the same red watered down to add some rosiness to his cheeks and his nose. I used midnight blue for his eyes, which were a bit difficult for me to paint because they're so small, and his beard is soapstone watered down to a wash, and then I wiped the excess off. I'm using E6000 to glue the mail plaque back on, and here he is. What do you think? Would this be the perfect place to keep those precious letters to Santa from your little ones? For this project, I am using the test cut for one of our newest DIY kits on our website at CnCDIYFactory.com. I modified the kit to include a root system at the base of the trees and a tab that slides into the base to keep the trees stable in their upright position. To create the look I want, I will need layers, so I'm starting with staining all of the pieces with Minwax water-based stain in Legacy Brown. You can get this stain tinted in over 200 colors at the paint counter at either Lowe's or Menards, and it's safe to use indoors, it has no odor, it's non-combustible, and it dries quickly. This set of 3 whimsical laser-cut trees features 3 large trees in differing sizes from 19 inches to 15 inches and then 11.5 inches tall. These would make a beautiful tablescape because they are double-sided, or you could display them on a mantle or an entryway table. They would look beautiful anywhere you place them. To get the layered look, I am using Sweet Pickens milk paint in Basil. This is a deep, rich, evergreen color that is perfect for these trees. Milk paint comes in a powder, and you mix it with equal parts of powder to warm water. Then you mix it up really well and let it set for about 10 minutes to incorporate the paint pigments, and the paint thickens up. I'm applying the milk paint with a chip brush, and I want to try to get the look of branches. So I'm brushing the paint in a direction of how I imagine the branches would look. Milk paint does self-level, but I'm hoping that I can get this to show the brush marks. So to get that look, I am applying it in a thick layer in some areas and a thinner layer in others. Then I'll use my heat gun to quickly dry the paint. And so far my plan is working. Look at that crackle layer in the center. Oh, I love using milk paint. I need more layers, so I'm adding a second coat the same way and quickly drying it with my heat gun. I painted both sides of all of the trees with the milk paint, and just look how fantastic that is. But wait, we're not done yet. To bring out all the layers and show the chippy, crackly effect the milk paint provides, I'm using my finger sander with 220 grit sanding paper to sand back some of the layers and leave the milk paint buttery smooth to the touch. After wiping away the paint dust, you can see how the milk paint and the stain have left behind these beautiful layers that look like branches. For the tags, I am dry brushing on some white swan from DIY Paint. Now this is not necessary, but I was trying for a weathered look on these as well. DIY Paint is a clay-based paint and it must be sealed, so I am using the DIY clear wax to seal them. Then I'll follow that up with my favorite brown wax, Howard's Chalk Teak Wax in dark. I want to add a bit of age and also have the brown wax settle down into the words on each tag. To give the tags a bit of color, I am using Prima Finnabair Art Alchemy Wax in Moss Green, and I'm using my finger to apply it just around the edges of each tag. The milk paint also needs to be sealed in, and at the same time, I want to add a bit more depth to the trees. I'm using Fusion Antiquing Glaze. I will brush this on, then I'll wipe off the excess before it dries. This deepens that basil color of the milk paint as well as the stain on the trunks of the trees. The antiquing glaze also creates a barrier for the DIY white wax that I'm going to be using to create an illusion of dusting of snow on the branches. I'll apply the white wax all over the trees, then I'll wipe off the excess. In addition to the DIY white wax, I am using the DIY white dust. When this is brushed onto the wax, it melts into the wax and creates a beautiful snowy effect. Now it may look like here that I have gotten carried away with the white wax and the dust, but just wait until it settles in and cures. You're going to love it. To put the tags on the trees, I'll hot glue the tag in place. Then I have a small bunch of greenery and a rusty crusty bell. I am going to attach these to the top of the tag along with a small shoestring bow in a pop of red. To add a little something something to the trees, I'm using Pentart Snow Pen and applying a thin line of this to the tops of the branches, then using my finger and lightly dabbing the line down to appear as though the snow has just fallen on the branches. Now we need to put the bases together. I am using the Stick Fast CA glue in the thick formula and layering the bases one on top of the other as close to center as I can. Now this set in this video, which I had mentioned at the beginning, is my test cut for the set of 3 whimsical laser cut trees. And being as it is my test cut, the trunks do not have the root system at the base of the trees and a tab that slides into the base to keep the trees stable in their upright position. So I am gluing them into the bases with Titebond Quick and Thick and Stick Fast CA glue. Now gluing the trees is not necessary for the modified version you will find on our website. Now to finish out these trees, I am adding some Deco Art Snow Tex. I'm applying it to the top base piece under the tree with a paint spatula. All of our DIY kits come with instructions and pictures for inspiration and can be found on our website at www.CnCDIYFactory.com. I am in love with these trees and they are staying with me to be displayed on my bookshelf in our living room. But you can have a set for yourself and I will have the link in the description box below. In this project, I am using one of our classic original designs, our 9x7 Farmhouse Makers Frame. There are 10 different sizes available on our website. Now, I have designed these frames with the maker or creator in mind. The backer board comes away from the frame in order to easily add stamps inlays, transfers, decoupage paper, or stencils, and then it sets into a 1/4-inch channel in the back of the frame once it's ready to be attached. The frame is a 1-inch thick solid piece of wood and can be stained or painted in any color of your choice. I am staining this frame and both sides of the backer board in Minwax water-based stain in Legacy Brown. This stain can be found at the paint counter at Lowe's or Menards. Once the stain is dry, I'm using Fusion Mineral Paint in Victorian Lace, and I will dry brush this over the stain in one direction. Then to create texture, I'll dry brush in the other direction, creating hash marks for a vintage look. And I will apply the same technique to the entire frame. Once the Fusion paint is dry, I'll use my finger sander with the 220 grit sandpaper and sand both pieces, also in both directions, to create hatch marks in the sanding. Now this is a great background for any type of vintage decor, so depending on what your creativity is, you could add anything to this. I am going to use this to create a framed postcard. So I'm starting with the IOD Christmas Post stamp set and the IOD black ink. I am taking the postcard stamp with the divider and placing this on the backer board off to the right of center. Then I will line up the canceled stamp in the upper right corner, and to make sure I have it lined up, I will use the frame for reference. To pick my stamps up off the backer board and keep them lined up, I'm using the thin mount from IOD that I have cut down into more manageable sizes. I line up the thin mount with the corner of my backer board and press it to the stamps and lift it up. Then I apply the IOD black ink. Now I hold the thin mount over the backer board and line up the right corner, then lay the stamp on the backer board. I hold the stamp in one place with one hand, then I use my other hand to lightly press the stamp into the surface. Then I lift straight up for a perfect impression. I wish I had re-inked my stamp because it is a little bit lighter than what I wanted, but the impression is still dark enough to see. Next, I want to add a little vintage flourish, so I grabbed my Essential Stencil Vintage Flourish Corners stencil set and I selected the image I want to use. I am using an Essential Stencil domed stencil brush and the color Conservatory by Fusion Paint. I load up my brush with some paint and then I offload the paint until the brush is almost dry. Then I swirl the paintbrush over the top of the stencil with very little pressure. This is the method that I prefer to use to get clean, crisp stencil lines. I think this transfer set that's called Santa's Hollow from IOD is probably my favorite. I have used this set more than any other set that was released this holiday season. I am taking the Santa with the tree and the ornaments and applying this transfer to the left side of the postcard. Applying transfers is very simple as long as you make sure your surface is completely dry. You simply peel off the white backer piece, place your transfer down, and rub over it with the transfer tool, which comes in each transfer set. I peel back the carrier sheet as I go to ensure I have all of the little pieces down. At this point you could be done, but I want this to look like a little girl took her mommy's pretty little postcard and wrote a note to Santa on it. So I printed out the address to the North Pole and a sweet message from Molly on my printer. I do not have any carbon papers, so I'm scribbling a pencil on the back of the paper. Then I'm using a stylus to go over each letter and number carefully to create my transfer. Then I will use a very small tip pen and go over all of it. To seal up the postcard and give it a little more vintage feel, I'll use the DIY clear wax, then I'll go over that with the Howard's Chalk Cheek Wax in dark to age the edges and corners. Then taking a lint-free towel, I'll blend the edges, and I'll do the same thing to the frame. I was inspired by a post I saw from Lisa at SassyTreasures a couple of months ago, and I loved it. I will add a picture of the post here. I used the same outline, but I added a couple of my own touches, such as the frame and the sweet note from Molly. I'll tag Lisa in this video in appreciation of her inspiration. Go give her some love as well. Now to put the frame together. You can use glue or a staple gun to adhere the backer board into the frame. I like to use this frame tacker to add the little points into the frame and secure the back. This is a must-have for any thrifted frame flip or to use on our makers frames. Isn't this just about the sweetest framed postcard? I just love it, and a big thanks to Lisa at SassyTreasures for the inspiration. Let's take a quick look at all three farmhouse Christmas projects. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you enjoyed these three festive Christmas projects as much as I loved creating them. From our thrifted Santa mailbox makeover to the whimsical laser cut trees, to that sweet little postcard to Santa framed in our Farmhouse-Style Makers Frame. Each piece adds a little extra magic to the season. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Let me know which project was your favorite. Your support means the world, and it truly helps our channel grow. If you'd like to try out any of the DIY kits I used today, I'll have the links for you down in the description box. All of our kits are handmade right here in our shop at CnC DIY Factory. Thanks again for watching, friends. Wishing you a joyful, creative, and cozy holiday season. Keep practicing random acts of crafting, and I'll see you in the next video.